I love that the birth rate is declining because people are finally getting real with themselves and realizing they actually don't want to be parents. They've never wanted to be parents. They just don't want to be left behind. They just don't want to regret not having kids. But people are realizing that it's actually worse to regret having them than not having them. And that actually our grandmas and great-grandmas and great-great-great-great-grandmas, when they had 10, 15, 19 kids, those were not choices. That was either grape, lack of access to abortion or birth control, or literally just to use them for child labor on the farms. And I say that as one of my husband's grandma just died. And I found out that her mother had 19 children, buried 6 of them. You will never convince me that anyone chooses to have 19 children, but they lived on a farm. And that's what everybody seemed to have like 10, 12, 15 kids. Do you think they wanted to be parents? Do you really think they wanted to be parents? Or did they have no choice? Also, Moses, okay. You're okay. He will not leave this thing alone, so he can't heal. And I love, he's like, I don't want to be on your dumb video. Okay, where are you going? Oh, he's gonna go back there. I love that they're actually writing articles with headlines like this. 2 reasons, like the fact that people even can say that they regret parenthood. Oh my God, this is killing me. Look at him. Almost. The fact that people are even like saying it out loud. Just, regretful parents on the Reddit, right? Or one of my mutuals, her whole page is reading letters from regretful parents because people still can't be, honest with it in terms of telling people, so they have to send it in anonymously or do it on Reddit forums. And even the women, the people they interviewed in this, but especially the women, guess what? Wouldn't leave their last name. Wonder why? I wonder why. Well, partly also because they don't want to harm their kids. They don't want their kids to ever read this. But also because women are judged for it. Before I get into this article, one of this same thing with marriage. Do not ever trust a woman who is or a man, but especially a woman. Okay? Because a lot of times it's the women who are pushing this marriage crap so much. Do not trust a woman who's like, oh my God, you gotta get married. I'm married. I love my marriage, but I understand very much so that marriage does not work out well for most women. And I also got married later in life when at 42. When I loved my life, and I am not afraid of being single. I've been single most of my life and loved it. So the only reason why I'm not is because I actually like my life now just as much as I did when I was single. But that is not usually the case. And it's not the case for children either. So anytime a woman tries to push marriage or children on you, do not trust the source. Am I anti-marriage? Obviously not. I am anti don't live with a man and do wife stuff without any of the legal protections. So I'm not even talking about marriage here. I'm talking about living with men and partnering with men. But that's another video. But this right here, let me tell you, one of the reasons why I was able to stand in my truth of not wanting kids is because I had enough women in my life who were child-free, and I had enough moms in my life who were honest with themselves and honest with me, who were like, don't do it. It was even the women who actually loved their kids, liked being moms, but were honest with me and are like, you would hate this. You would hate this. Don't do it. Don't believe it. It's hard. It is hard. You have to sacrifice all this crap. And I was like, oh, okay, thank you. Thank you. So in this article, they talk about there are 2 reasons that lead to regretful parenting. One is burnout, and behind the burnout is a lot of other factors. And the other one is that women who never actually wanted to be parents. And I'm going to hit on that point second. I'm going to go over this one first, because the second one I think is the most important one, because a lot of women need to get real honest with themselves. Why am I wanting kids? What is this about? And a lot of times it is not driven by a deep desire or reality. It's driven by ego. It is driven, and by ego I mean in patriarchal conditioning of what you're trying to prove something, or it's about something, you wanting something. But it's not about actually wanting kids. It's about wanting something else that has nothing to do with kids. Leave kids out of it. Because this woman, she locks herself in her kitchen and wonders, who am I? What am I doing here? She can't pursue paid work because she has to shepherd a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old to school, as well as therapy and appointments for their disability. Now, what they leave out of this article, in this story in particular, is the husband. Why can't she work? Like, I understand why she can't work, but what this article does tend to what this article is absolutely leaving out is the men's role in this, which is epic. It's huge. They're just talking about parents. They're not really talking about moms. This is focused on moms would be a whole nother thing, but I'm surprised to see all of this in writing, because this conversation of not even letting people admit to regretting this thing that they keep pushing on us because, what about the birth rate? Ugh. To me, the declining birth rate is a sign that women are taking their lives back and not being hijacked by pregnancy and raising kids that they never wanted and that they couldn't abort. They couldn't afford. They, got impregnated for like the worst, most awful, violent reason. And maybe their parents or the law or someone made them have these children. But look at it. She just fantasizes about wanting to go to Hawaii and never coming back. And you see the difference between her and a lot of men is the men will actually go to Hawaii and never come back. Or they will fake their own death while kayaking. If you made it this far and you want me to give you the follow-up of that dad who faked his own death in the kayak and then went to Europe to try to meet up with some girl he met online, there is an update. I would love to give it to you, but I got like 30 stories I want to do. So type that in the comments, kayak guy. The difference is that women actually don't usually leave. They stay. Even if they're miserable, they stay. Whereas the men will just up and cheat, up and leave, or even fake their own death. Or if they have a little bit more integrity, they'll stick around and they'll just they'll stick around officially. But they'll pay the bills, but they'll stay at work all the time to avoid their family. They'll do anything but spend time with their children. And I'm not sure which is worse, honestly. Because as somebody who had a father who, wanted kids, but then realized, I don't know what to do, and really made it very clear that he would rather hang out with anyone but us, this is a very painful existence. And this article talks about millions of parents who don't want their kids. When American parents were older than 45 were asked in a 2013 Gallup poll. Now, that was a long time ago, y'all. That's like, 12 years ago? Many said that if they could have it do it over, the 7% of parents over 45 said they would have zero. So 7% of parents sound like they feel like they made a mistake. In Germany, 8% of mothers and fathers in 2016, so they fully agree that they wouldn't want kids. And 11% said they rather agreed. So they're like, pretty much wouldn't want to do it again. So 11 plus 8, that's 19%. That's almost 1 in 5 parents were like, this sucks. We hate it. If I could do it again, I wouldn't do it. That's 1 out of 5 almost. In Poland, 11 to 14%, with no difference between men and women, no big difference, said they'd rather, and this is just the ones who admit it in a poll. Combined, these figures suggest that many millions of people regret having kids. Now, how well can they hide that regret? Well, some of them don't hide it. And then, they interviewed like a bunch of experts and stuff. And they said, it's feelings of ambivalence about parenthood aren't necessarily going to do harm to children, but when regret suffuses the parent-child dynamic, the whole family can suffer. And as somebody who experienced that with one parent, I think a lot of people are used to their dads hating being parenting because they just aren't around and don't want to do anything, and that entitlement, they just can't get past that. And they also weren't raised to parent. They want a legacy and blah, blah, blah. But I do think that it hits real hard if your mom doesn't want to have you. Or if you were born inside somebody, right? And then that person also raises you and clearly wishes you didn't exist. I don't know. I'm guessing that hurts a little bit more, but I don't know. There's also a link between adolescent mothers that suggests an association between regretting parenthood and have a harsher, more rejecting attitude towards their children. Adolescent parenthood, I don't know what that means, but that sounds, I know that, what do they call an elder pregnancy or something? If you get pregnant in your late 30s. So I don't know what somebody tell me if you know. But basically, young mothers tend to be more harsher and have stronger feelings of this. But regardless, children might feel emotional neglect if the parent consistently really doesn't want to be there. And again, I would argue that this is the experience of most children with their dads. Maybe not most, but a lot. But I'd say it's with moms too. Anybody who knows children knows, like they say here, children are so focused on themselves developmentally so they can internalize a lack of interest from their mother or father as a personal failing. So there are two major pathways to parental regret. One of them is burnout. Parents might be devoted to their children but feel exhausted and inadequate. Now, they go into how part of this is because people are not prepared for how hard parenting can be. Some people don't even think about what it would be like to raise a child with a disability. Some people don't think about what it might be to have a child who really is never going to be able to be independent. There's so many scenarios. Or to just, this idea that you're just, and dogs are not the same. But I will say that a lot of people, I was delusional about what it took to be, have a dog. I hate saying dog mom. I love this dog so much. And the only reason why I put up with all of the stuff that it takes, because he's a traumatized dog. He has a lot of anxiety. He cannot be left alone. So we spend a fortune on dog sitters. We've tried everything. We have baby cameras. We have puzzles. We've tried everything. He's been we adopted him at 6 years old. And he came, he'd been abandoned so many times. He just wants to be near somebody or another dog at all times. But, and he's a pandemic dog, lots of things. Anyway, our whole life revolves around this dog. I don't talk about it much. But at the same time, there's a part of me that's I will not get a dog for a while after he is gone, and he's old. But I am obsessed with him too. I love him so much. I love him so, so much. And if I have wanted a dog my entire life, my entire life. And I almost got one so many times, and I knew that I was not in a place that I could actually care for a dog. And I'm so glad I almost got a dog before I moved to Europe. I was in LA, and I was like, well, I'll probably stay here. I could get a dog. And my landlord luckily was like, I don't know. I don't want you to have a dog. And that's what stopped me. And thank God I almost got a dog. I wanted one in college when other people were getting dogs, but I didn't know it. And my mom said, I will not take care of that dog. Just so you know, if you get a dog, you will not rehome that dog with me. And I remember thinking, well, there's a lot of stuff I want to do. Maybe getting a dog is not the best thing. But I love Fifi Marie Hamlet. Wherever you are, Fifi, she lived to be 18. I was obsessed with that dog. I've always wanted a dog, but I didn't get a dog until I was 43, I think. I don't remember, 42, 43. And even having a dog with a partner is still a lot of work. I can't imagine having a dog that I have to take care of who has this high needs that I didn't want, that I didn't truly want. And the way, whenever I would see babies, I'm I never was oh my God. But whenever I saw dogs, I was oh my God. I've always just loved dogs so much. I've dreamed of having my own dog. Oh my God, he looks so cute, doesn't he? He's so... hates that cone, but it's soft, it's comfortable. So I go into all that to say that a lot of parents they like the idea of having a kid, but they don't actually think about the reality of it. I mean, men definitely don't. Men want children like they want a dog. But I'd even say they want children like they want a plant or something, because even a dog is a lot of work. But I think people don't talk enough about, and some of the mutuals are the ones who first said this, and I fully agree with, do not have children if if you are not prepared to be a single parent, right? If you're not prepared to have a child with who you're going to have to be a caregiver to for a long time because of a disability or something else, or the kid could get in an accident, anything can happen. Do you want to take care of children? Do you want to really take care of a dog? Because we can't just leave him. Right? Sometimes I'm maybe I should, get a cat next. And people don't be thinking that cats are that easy either. I'm okay. I love my kids, but I don't have what it takes. That's what one person said. That's what a lot of people think. Part of this is because the whole burnout comes from not being a perfect parent. And they talk about how perfectionists end up really struggling with parenthood because no matter what they do for their kids, it's never enough. So they always kind of end up, and that part of that is a cultural problem. Part of that is a internet thing right? Try to be a part of some of these mom groups. I've been a part of a dog parent group, and oh my God, I quit that really quick. I could not believe how judgmental and cruel some of these people are when I ask an innocent question. So if you're a perfectionist and you don't deal with that, you're going to be a nightmare parent. And that's what a lot of people don't think about, how we are going to, and I didn't, how we are going to show up in these scenarios exactly who we are. So if we haven't worked through any of this stuff, your kids are going to deal with it. If you had an abusive relationship and you haven't really gone to therapy or doing some stuff before you date again, you are taking all of that into that relationship. If you have a lot of stuff from childhood that you've never dealt with, most men, I would say, is because they refuse to pay for therapy because they're cheap, and they'll spend it on OnlyFans or something else. And also because of the idea of under patriarchy, they're taught that, that's not what men do. And then they take all of that into a relationship, and wherever you go, there you are, right? So there's a lot of stuff that's already there because of what's going on in here. But shocker, severe financial strain, being a single parent, and a history of rejection or abuse in one's own childhood can contribute to parental regret. Right? So there's a lot of parents out there that wanted to be parents, maybe would otherwise love being a parent, but because of being, forced to be a single parent because of what their partners may have done, or just bailed or whatever, or some other situation, or more importantly, just the financial strain, poverty, all kinds of situations make people who would have loved to have been parents and make great parents end up being so freaking stressed out and burned out that they end up becoming regretful parents too. And like I said, any childhood abuse, childhood SA, or anything like that, oh, you better believe that's coming out with your kids. All those issues are coming up. And I don't mean like you're going to do that, but I mean you are going to project that. I swear, so many people out there who like literally is like project all this stuff onto their children in terms of like become overprotective maybe because they're so afraid of this is going to happen or that's going to happen, or they actually become that abuser because they're in that cycle of violence. And then of course the pandemic didn't help things. Parental burnout has risen during the pandemic. Shocker. But I'd say, again, it's annoying that they talked about parents, although I'm glad they brought men into this. But these are two separate studies that need to be done, right? Because the women the men regret it because they're like stuck in the home. But a lot of them just were like, let's go back to the office. But a lot of women are in there doing everything. No wonder they became regretful parents, because they also realized, holy crap, I am a married single mom. They also say, this is something that right now people are probably thinking about, there's parental regret related to relentless taxing events of the past year, right? Imagine being a parent and thinking, oh my God, look what's happening on with these data centers, AI data centers. Stop using AI unless you absolutely have to. And I'm telling you, you're using it already too much in ways that you don't even know. Please look into it. Turn it off on everything possible. And please stop using ChatGPT and Open AI, whatever. Data centers, look it up. Environmental harm. But when you look at the future of what's going to happen, we're not going to have any clean air. Definitely no clean water because of data centers and a lot of the other factors, fossil fuel burning, whatever. So somebody in another situation may have actually been a confident parent, but when you're facing climate catastrophe after another, you might feel, I'm not enough. There's something wrong with me. Parents who are burned out, oh my God. He's like, please take this thing off me. Parents who are burned out may be more likely to become neglectful or violent towards their children. And kids with burned out parents are more likely to experience symptoms of depression and anxiety. The other, and this is the second part, the other key reason for parental regret is that some parents simply never wanted kids in the first place. And then they go into Mary's story. Now, Mary's a stay-at-home mom. Can you imagine not only having children that you actually never wanted, but then also being a stay-at-home mom? Now, there's lots of women are stay-at-home moms and actually want to be that. It is a 24-hour job that should be paid $200,000 or $300,000 a year or more when you add up all the labor. But imagine doing that job that you get no money for, no retirement for, no any of that stuff. And it's all hinged on a man, making sure that he doesn't leave you. And you never wanted kids. I'd argue that's how probably most of our grandmas and great grandmas, that's their reality. So this woman, Mary, accidentally became pregnant in 2014. She says she accidentally became pregnant and experienced a stillbirth in 2014. Around the same time, her mentor died by feeling that she wanted to prove. Anytime you're trying to prove something, please pause, because it almost never works out well. Almost never. Sometimes it does, but proving something, I can't tell you how many mistakes I made by trying to prove something. Sometimes the thing itself wasn't bad, but the motive behind it was not great. Anyway, watch out for this. When you're trying to prove something, prove she could do pregnancy correctly. Oh my God, she's trying to prove to patriarchy. Prove to herself. Do you see how this warps our mind? Mary conceived again. Look at this. I love how honest this is. I let hormones and feelings and trauma trick me into having kids. I'm going to say that again. I let hormones and feelings and trauma trick me into having kids. I would love to know how many women could say this or feel this. Maybe could never say this because it's too hard to admit this. This takes courage. This takes a lot of self-awareness. I really appreciate this level of honesty. When her first son was 9 months old, she accidentally became pregnant again. I hate it. I just don't like kids. And yet, look, she reads aloud to her children, cooks for them, and generally adheres to textbook parenting strategies for well-adjusted children. But Mary also ruminates about what she could do and who she could be without them, and counts the days until they're totally independent. I hate this story. I also think this is a very common story. I don't think women realize how common this is. And you know, honestly, one of the things that whenever somebody is like, are you going to have kids? Whenever somebody's really pushing parenthood really hard, this is what I think. This is you. Because so many people, the same way people always want me to drink, not people, alcoholics usually are just so bothered by the fact that I don't drink. This is what a lot of moms who really hate it. Misery does love company, okay? To know that you're not the only one who is suffering from something. Like, people want community, and this is a really twisted way to get it. But this is when somebody is like really like hates child-free people. This is what I assume that's going on up there. Because somebody who really loves it would be unbothered by child-free people. Look at this. When her friends who have teenagers bemoan their babies growing up, she told me, I'm like, you lucky bitch. I love this. This is so honest, y'all. You lucky bitch. I love this, but look at this. So another thing is that, you know, Mary told her that her therapist has ruled out postpartum depression and burnout. Her regret isn't a phase. Because sometimes it is a phase, right? From my understanding, you know, postpartum, stuff like that, like it is a phase, like a lot of times, because it's those earlier years are so hard. And I am not a mom, I am an aunt, but I also was a nanny. Okay, so I do have some experience with children and babies especially. And I remember when I was a nanny, I was like, God, I'm so overwhelmed and bored. I don't know how I can feel both those at the same time, but I do. And then I got to go home. And I also didn't have a man that I had to raise as a child as well and resent the hell out of. There was another person in here who was a researcher, said that some of the 8 out of 10 fathers regretted, in her research and interview, 10 fathers who regretted becoming parents. Eight of them reported doing it, not wanting kids, but having it for their partner. But she said that her female subjects had supportive partners and their financial resources to raise kids, but still felt an ever-present burden. So even if they had, you know, if they weren't doing it, you know, weren't married single moms and had money, and they still felt an ever-present burden of being a parent. Now, I think part of that is just normal. But imagine all that, and then you never really wanted kids. She concluded the parent is a predictor. Choosing parenthood is a predictor of adapting to it. Choosing parenthood. The people who do not adapt well to parenthood are the ones who didn't really choose it or didn't want it. And they conclude this a lot when they relate Poland to Germany, because in Poland it's much harder to get an abortion, and the regret of being a parent is much higher there. Children who are born to mothers that are a consequence of abortion denial were less likely to have, they had difficulty experiencing bonding with their kids, and they also felt trapped and resentful. And that is in comparison to mothers who had an abortion and subsequently had a child, right? So mothers who were able to not have them until they were ready and then had them. And then they interviewed someone who was like, I don't think my mom really wanted to be a mom, and attributed the neglect and abuse she experienced as a child to birth control not yet being available, which in these times, especially if you live in the U.S., please do not trust men with your birth control. Please, if you really aren't sure and you just don't get it, do it now. Get access to this while you can, because this may not be an option. They're coming for birth control. And then she says, as a kid, however, she couldn't help but think, what's wrong with me, right? The kid is always going to blame themselves for what the parent is dealing with. Like kids are just selfish, right? Kids are selfish. They're self-involved in terms of being not caring about the other people as much, because they have to, their brains are developing, right? They're not learning to be socialized and do that. But also, kids blame themselves for everything their parents are doing to them. Everything from neglect to physical abuse to sexual abuse. So if you do not want kids, your kids will pay a price for it. And because you're afraid of missing out, because all your friends, and I'm telling you, if you are in your mid to late 30s or early 40s, you are so vulnerable to this. Can't tell you how many people I know even who had kids because they didn't want to regret it and had it with a loser, and then they never really wanted kids. They were just afraid to not have it, and they're afraid of missing out, and they felt left out because so many, and that's why you got to have single child-free friends. If you're not sure, you got to have single, maybe not even just single, but child-free friends. Maybe they're partnered or not. But you will lose sight of how much you want to stay child-free by choice. If you will lose sight of that if you are surrounded by parents. There's one reason why I stopped going to baby showers unless there was somebody very close to me, because I felt like a loser. I thought there's something wrong with me. I started questioning all my choices around not having kids. And I never felt that any other time. The same thing with going to weddings. When I go to weddings, I was loving my life, and then I go to a wedding and I was like, oh, what's wrong with me? It's the only day out of the year that I'd be like, maybe I should get married because I'm at this stupid wedding. Especially if it's a beautiful wedding between people who clearly really love each other, and it's not and you actually like the partner. Then you're like, what's wrong with me? Why don't I want this? Why have I never dated anyone? I'm 32. I cried in so many bathrooms at weddings because I knew I'd never get married, which is a hilarious joke that ended up being in the end. But I didn't even dated anybody at 32, and I'm crying in bathrooms why don't I want this? Why am I not dating anybody? I'm nowhere near this. I've never even been on a date, really, And then as soon as the wedding was over, I was like, okay, back to my life. So be careful about going to baby showers if you're in this place of not knowing and feeling a lot of pressure to figure it out. Don't go to a baby shower. Don't go to a baby shower. Please don't. And then other people said, some people simply aren't cut out for raising children, and their kids will suffer as adults. But perhaps fewer parents would be regretful if society didn't make parenting so hard. And by society, I mean society, but also men. But also the government, If they don't have access to in the U.S., there's almost none of this. Can't even give birth without going into debt a ton. Childcare, family leave, the work schedules, maternity leave, all that stuff. Yeah, they may not regret it. The gender pay gap, promotion gap, and then, of course, the way the men behave and put all this on women. Yeah, maybe a lot of women would not regret it as much. But you have to think about all these things. People may also feel less shame in their regret and more motivation to address it if society held more realistic expectations of parents, and also let women talk about this more. I mean, let people in general, but especially women, because mothers are not allowed to ever regret having kids. They're expected to naturally adapt to motherhood, even though the first years are hard, And when the sacrifices don't get easier, that's supposedly because they're selfish, damaged, or both. That has been the narrative for so long. But good thing is Mary cried after this interview because she didn't realize so many other women felt this way. Anyway, let me know what y'all think. Oh, my sweet baby. Let me know what y'all think. If you haven't seen, yesterday I posted an interview with Daniela Mestenek Young, the woman who wrote, the knitting cult lady who wrote Uncultured and is coming out with a new book called The Unculting of America. And she wrote it with White Woman Whisperer. Go check out that interview. I did it on Patreon. There's a 2-hour version on Patreon that you can join. Join Patreon and watch me. I'm basically trying to create podcasts, but I don't have the finances to do that or the equipment to do that. So I'm slowly just doing it and hoping it'll just, work out. We had a wonderful conversation. Go check that out. Join my Patreon if you want to be there for some of these. And we just have a lot of fun over on Patreon. And like, comment, share. You can boost this video if you really like it. Send it to a friend. Comment. I love comments. I love the community that I've built here. And thanks for listening and thanks for your comment. And let me know if you heard that comment sound. Moses Cone comment song. I've been sick and Moses keeping company, but Moses also not feeling great, but he's doing better than before. Moses Cone comment song, Moses comment song. Look at he's dreaming here, but it's hard to tell, and he's got his little vest, but then here he is, falling asleep without his vest on me. Look at his sweet baby. Moses comment song, Moses comment song, Moses comment song, Moses comment song with the cone. He hates the cone, but it's not as uncomfortable as the big old plastic one. Did you hear the comment song?